Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. My name is Khaldun Azhari. I'm moderating this event today. I'm a member of the club. And thank you again for coming early today for this early lunch. I hope you enjoyed it as much as you will enjoy our speaker's speech today. It will be, of course, about the Japanese upcoming elections. It's the main news in Japan right now, and that's why we cannot take vacations as journalists. We have to stay around until after elections. But maybe we are lucky enough that one of our speakers today, Mr. Takao Toshikawa is going to talk about the after elections aspects. Of course, he's next to my next right, Mr. Takao Toshikawa, editor-in-chief of the publication Insideline. And he is very veteran analyst and journalist in work in Japan, and he's a member of our club. And to my very right is Professor Stephen Reed, Professor of Policy Studies at Chuo University. And he will talk about some issues related to the elections. We know that the main issue in these elections is constitution amendment, and if the ruling parties will gain 2/3 of the seats, and also the participation of the young people in the elections. And each speaker today will give us about 15 to 20 minutes. That will be followed by questions and answers. We have to finish the session at 1 o'clock sharp because our guest has to leave at that time. And at the very right, let me introduce Ms. Miho Hashimoto, our interpreter today. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to start our press event. Mr. Professor Reed will start first his insights. Thank you.
Good morning. First, I should apologize that I'm the reason for the early start. I live in Hachioji and have a class after this, so it takes a while to get back. The title I chose is, "This will be an important election. We will learn a lot." The sort of other half of that, the other side of the coin is we don't know a lot. The one thing we do know is the fundamental outcome. I mean, there's no reason to think, based on what we know now, that the LDP and the Komeito won't gain a majority. So that's not the real problem here. We'll learn a lot about other things afterwards. First, let me advertise my books. I put them on there so you can all know that these are wonderful books. They make good presents. Yeah, everybody should have at least one copy. I should mention that the Japan Decides books are extremely expensive, and the second one is not well edited. We will try to change that. If there's an election this year, it'll be this year. The Komeito book is cheap, but hard to get a hold of. It's not on Amazon in Japan. Anyway, there they are. In 1960, the Japanese electorate split over what is called the Ampo cleavage. Ampo is the Security Treaty of 1960. It was a huge event, and it set the pattern for Japanese politics thereafter, and including today. Although it's been losing power over the years, as most do. For a long time, it wasn't very long ago that journalists used to ask me, what if Ishihara Shintaro forms a party and plays the nationalist card? And I always said, there is no nationalist card. Nationalism is a vote loser, not a vote winner. But I didn't say so with confidence because there was no evidence. There is currently evidence. It's not a vote winner, it's a vote loser. The party that represents this set of issues the most clearly, the Party for Future Generations, in the last election, the Kokoro is actually called Kokoro in English, is the current manifestation, has won hardly any votes. The only time they get anybody elected is if they have a guy, they find a candidate who is going to win no matter what, can win under any nomination, can win without a nomination, is going to win anyhow, and their votes don't increase if you look at what that happens because they are running for the party of future generations. I'll skip the part about Tamagami there, but their best known candidate did not perform well at all. The party itself has only 4 seats at the present time, and probably will wind up with less thereafter after the election. There is no nationalism card. Is there a peace card? Well, that's what we're going to have the first clues since 1960. I don't have any guesses, even, let alone hypotheses, but what we'll find out is if it works, if there is anything to the other side of the coin. Let me say one more thing about Prime Minister Abe. Prime Minister Abe, the one thing that people tend to forget almost immediately is how bad the first Abe administration was, and how much the LDP was totally rejected in 2009. The Democrats didn't win as much as the LDP lost. The performance was horrible. The thing that happened during those 3 years and 3 months out of power, though, however, was that Abe seemed to have learned a lot. He's gotten really good. He understands better than any prime minister ever what the current political situation requires in order to get things passed. He's really learned a tremendous amount, and the Democrats have not. The only thing he's learned, first of all, not to try to sell it as a main issue. He's not putting constitutional revision at the front of his agenda. He gets things accomplished without causing too much trouble through stealth, misdirection, and spin doctoring. All of these things I'm not criticizing because I am a political scientist and I know that the way to get things done is stealth, misdirection, and spin doctoring. So this is not meant as a criticism, but in some ways the revision of the Constitution without revising the Constitution was a brilliant move, if you believe that you should revise the Constitution. So it was a wonderful strategic move, and it worked. Misdirection, I mean, that's standard practice in politics. So don't talk about the issues you're weak on, talk about the issues you're strong on. But he's managed to do it much better than anybody before, and he's managed to do it way better than the Democrats have been able to bring their issues to the fore, partly because they're not unified enough to bring their own issues to the fore. And then spin doctoring is the one that's the clearest and is probably of the most interest to this audience. He uses big data. He uses the Twitterverse, or whatever you want to call it. And so when he sees that saying this produces lots of criticisms, he stops saying it. He does not necessarily change his policies. He changes his framing. This also is standard practice, and of course, as I'm an American, and American presidents are awfully damn good at this, of taking something that really sounds really bad and making it sound pretty good, or reverse. So this is also not a criticism. The first one was on restarting nuclear power plants, where he was really, every time he said restart nuclear power plants, his criticism increased. And so he stopped saying it. And his whole line became, if you ask him about nuclear power, he'd say, safety first, we're going to leave it up to the experts. And then he would leave out the last part, and then we will restart the nuclear power plants. This is very wise politics. In the current situation, the constitutional revision, if you look at their current pamphlet, the LDP's current pamphlet, is at the very last paragraph, in small print, is about constitutional revision. It doesn't start off with the word constitutional revision. It starts off with, based upon a national consensus, right? Good spin doctoring. One would hope that the balance of spin doctoring expertise would even out sooner or later. Okay, does the peace card have any legs? Well, we've seen demonstrations. There's and in some ways more than most people expected, more than I expected. The one thing we've seen that's probably most interesting is the number of young people out there demonstrating against collective defense, et cetera, and revising the Constitution. That is a surprise. If you look prefecture by prefecture, you see that lots and lots of unorganized groups of all kinds have come together to do this. It's nothing like 1960, that's for sure, but there's some. And they've had one serious major accomplishment that is quite surprising. They got first of all, making the demand was surprising. They demanded that the opposition offer only one candidate in the single-member districts. That's, first of all, wise, but it worked. And the fact that it worked in every single one is a remarkable accomplishment. Is something that I would have bet against. I would have put good money against, actually, but it happened. So that is that. And then the other one is, of course, the communists cooperating with the rest of the opposition. This is a potentially important fact. The two pariah parties of the old party system were the Komeito and the communists. The Komeito has been integrated into the system. This may mean that the communists will be two. It may not, but it may. So what happens to electoral cooperation will be important, whether it changes the outcome or not. Komeito is in a more trouble this time than they have been in the past. It's hard to tell whether the protests, the Soka Gakkai members and Komeito members have been seen in and covered in protesting against constitutional revision and that kind of thing, which has been the long-standing position of Komeito and Soka Gakkai. This is the first time these kinds of protests have hit the newspapers. We don't actually know whether the protests are bigger or smaller than they used to be, because there were also protests before that didn't hit the newspapers, so we have no real way of comparing. Nevertheless, we know that several different Komeito candidates are very worried that they're not going to get as many Soka Gakkai votes and many Komeito votes as they did in the last election, and are seeking LDP votes. And the LDP is gaining confidence, which is perfectly reasonable. They're doing well, and less willing to direct some of their voters to vote for Komeito. How will that work out? The second thing, of course, is how will all of the cooperation among the opposition parties work out? It's also extremely hard to tell. In fact, the only thing we really know about it is that if it continues, it will work better the second time than it did the first, because the first time it never works very well. So we'll see how that works out. What will change people's minds if they change? We got to remember that there are a lot of people still undecided, and there are a lot of young people who've never voted before, and there's people who are presumably open to changing their minds. It will not be Abenomics. Abenomics is everybody has to talk about it. It is important, but the average voter is not going to make up his mind on the basis of Abenomics. I must offer my heartfelt thanks to the British people for providing a wonderful example of this basic principle. Rational arguments about economics do seldom move votes, because everybody can do it, and they can take any side and sound perfectly rational. The only thing that's really important about debates over economics is whether you can sound convincing. And Abe has mastered this much better than any prime minister before him. He can argue with the head of Keidanren and hold his own. He feels really confident talking about it. He may be right, he may be wrong, but whether that's not the part that the voters can see. What the voters can see is that he's confident. The other thing they can see is, however, the results. So there aren't a whole lot of results yet. They can quote a lot of numbers, but the kind of things that voters feel have not yet been positive. We'll see how that works out. The other thing that will, the big thing will be peace. The big thing that might change, I continue to say might because there's no guarantee on this, might change minds if their minds are changed, is peace. And the reason is very simple, the same reason that immigration was the thing that moved votes of the British people. It's a simple issue, been on the agenda for a long time. Everybody has a sort of gut feeling about it, and you can say, and you don't have to listen to a bunch of rational arguments to do it, to vote on it. The other thing that's really interesting to watch for several reasons is the agricultural vote. The place to watch it is Yamagata. Yamagata has farmers, Nokyo, the farm cooperatives, hates TPP and wants to make it go away. The two candidates in Yamagata is an opposition candidate that has a long-standing opposition to TPP. The LDP candidate is a agricultural person who came from the agricultural community, who is now taking the stance that TPP is a good thing for agriculture, and but the farmers don't appear to be buying that. But the main thing that happened in Yamagata was that the Nokyo, the No Seiden, the political organization of the farmers, did not endorse either candidate. And the reason they did not is because there were two arguments. One is we should try to, the obvious one that most political scientists pay attention to is we disagree with TPP, we should vote against it. That's pretty straightforward. The other side is we have to stay close to the government. We have to stay close to the party in power. This is the thing that one of the things that kept the LDP in power for so long, because you used to be able to say with certainty, no matter what happens in this election, the government will be the LDP. That you have to stay close to the government, and this, how much that pulls, whether you still stay close to the government or decide to vote your own preferences. Preferences are not necessarily interests. Preferences as against LDP, against TPP, interests may be in favor. The final thing to say is the third force is moribund, except for the possibility of Osaka restoration, I guess is the current translation, but it's Osaka Ishin. Osaka Ishin, the reason it's not moribund is really simple. They are a local party. They have a very strong base in Osaka and influence right next door. The thing to watch about them is, okay, a prediction without a whole lot of backing, but some. They won't win hardly any seats outside of Osaka or the immediate Kinki region. There may be some candidates they've got that will win no matter what, but for the most part, they're not going to win. Osaka Ishin as itself will not win anything outside of that area. Again, I thank the British people for providing the wonderful answer in the Scottish National Party. In a two-party system, it is very hard to establish a third party. Ask the Lib Dems in Britain. They will tell you the same thing. But if you have a local base, you can. Osaka has one. Osaka Ishin has one, not anything nearly as strong as the SNP, but nevertheless they have one, and they therefore might survive. The things that will happen after the election, for the most part, I will leave to the next speaker. But the one thing to say is that these kinds of changes, how it's interpreted right after the election, can make a difference in the long run. Does the peace issue have legs? If it does, electoral cooperation among the opposition parties may last. If it doesn't, it won't. So and the two-party system will have to start from scratch again.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Toshikawa. Please.
Toshikawa です。よろしく。ワーキングプレステーブルが相当空いているということはですね、もう今度の参議院選の結果が見えているので、今日ここの場に来て話を聞く必要がないと考えておられるのではないかと、理解しております。
My name is Toshikawa. Thank you for having me today. I see that the working press table is quite vacant today. I guess it means that people have a good visibility on the result of the upper house and feel that there is no necessity to hear this session out.
それでも一応私に課せられたテーマの一つは参議院選挙の予測、それから参院選後の 日本の政局について話すわけですから、まず前者から一応お話したいと思います。
But still, I would like to stick to my role of explaining 2 points, mainly the electoral forecast and also post-election policies.
リード先生のお話の中にもありましたけれども、今回の参議院選挙においては32ある、いわゆる一人区で、野党統一候補が自立できたというのはいずれにしても先例がない画期的なことだったのは事実ですが、この焦点の32の選挙区の勝敗の結果は、ほぼ間違いなく野党候補が相当大きな敗北を喫するということです。
Okay. And so Professor Reed has spoken parts of what I'm going to say, but we have the so-called single-seat districts right now, 32 of them, with the opposition party joining forces together. And this, as a fact, is unprecedented, but the forecast is that in most of these 32 single-seat districts, we can almost definitely say that the opposition party will have a big defeat.
まず北から言いますと、野党統一候補がほぼ間違いなく勝利できるのは、まず岩手、それからリード先生の中に話にもあった山形、宮城、そして甲信越の長野、そして沖縄、以上の5つの一人区においては野党統一候補が勝利するのはほぼ間違いありません。
And I said a big defeat in most of the districts. So which are the ones that I predict will win? Well, I'm sure that from going from north, Iwate Prefecture, and the prefecture of Yamagata, which Professor Reed talked about, Miyagi, and then Nagano Central, and then down south Okinawa. These 5 districts will see a win in the opposition party.
一応これまでマスコミ各社の選挙戦序盤の情勢調査とか、あるいは政党別に行われている個別の調査を見る限り、接戦と言われている県はこの一人区ですが以下の通りです。まず、福島、そして山梨、そして、三重、大分、もう一つあるな、青森、ごめんなさい、青森です。でこの中で、現時点でそのマスコミ各社の情勢調査結果では大体五分五分とされていますが、実は先週末 NHK が行った調査があります。これは出口調査といって、事前に投票前、つまり期日前投票というシステムを取ってますが、この投票所に NHK はお金と人員がたくさんありますので、全部貼り付けてですね、3万件のサンプルを取りました。その結果を見ますと、接戦と言われているところでは、ほぼどの選挙区でもですね、この期日前投票では、自民党候補が野党統一候補を上回っている結果が、先週の土曜日、日曜日の出口調査で出ています。
Okay. And also there are some early survey predictions from the press, or there's party individual surveys going on. And according to these results, we know that in 5 prefectures, there is a close match between the ruling LDP against the opposition. And those 5 prefectures against single-seat districts are Fukushima, Yamanashi, Mie, Oita, and Aomori. But looking at the results of the NHK exit survey that they have announced last weekend on Saturday and Sunday, there is something called the pre-elections, the pre-date actual elections. And at the exit of this, NHK, with their abundant resource, have put a lot of people at the exit to measure 30,000 samples. And looking at this result, it seems like in all 5 districts that I just mentioned, there will be more votes for LDP candidates than the opposition.
今 NHK がアナウンスしたと言いましたが、公表はしていません、この調査結果は。
And I translated announce, but it actually was not public. It's not announced.
この5つの接戦を展開している選挙区で、自民党候補が野党統一候補に対して3勝2敗という結果になったとした場合にはですね、いわゆる32の選挙区の勝敗は、自民統一候補が最大で26、野党統一候補が8、失礼、26ですから6ですね。それで最小でですね、24ないしは22対10、24対8、いずれにしてもはっきりしていることは、野党統一候補が当初目的とした32のうち10選挙区で勝利するという設定した目標に到達しない。加えて、岡田克也民進党代表の地元の三重でも現在野党候補は劣勢です。これに負けた場合に、岡田代表の引責辞任問題、一応9月の代表選まではそのまま続投するにしてもですね、はっきりしていることはですね、野党のリーダーシップの中で、代表、幹事長、選対委員長等の交代といったことがもうすでに、参院選後政局に盛り込まれています。それはどのような意味を持つのかというと、参院選挙後に行われる東京都知事選の候補者選定にも影響してくるし、都知事選挙そのものにも影響が出てくるということです。
Okay. So, counting the wins in these 5 single districts, if the LDP wins against the opposition by 3-2, 3 victories and 2 defeats, then the total result of the 32 single districts would be LDP versus opposition would be maximum 26 for LDP and 6 for opposition. Minimum 22 or 24, which would be either 26-6 or 24-8 or 22-10. In any sense, it is clear that the goal that the opposition parties have put up, which is 10 victories out of 32, is not going to happen. Even looking at Mie Prefecture, where Mr. Okada, the leader of the Democrats, is his home ground, you can see that the opposition party is losing as of today. So that would lead to the discussions of whether he should step down. I mean, he will continue until September, but they would have to talk about the change in the leadership, the heads and the chairpersons of the parties, right after the results of the upper house election is seen. And also it would impact the selection of the candidates for the governor election in Tokyo, and of course the ultimate result of that as well.
なぜ自民党が、選挙戦前の具体的に言えば選挙公示前の、増税問題であれほど大きなネガティブな、影響を受けたはずにもかかわらず、自民党が選挙戦で堅調、勢いがあるというようなことになっているかを説明したいと思います。
But we remember the Masuzoe incident very recently, and we know that it had a dire impact on the LDP right before the announcement of this election. But why is it that the LDP and its coalitions are doing a pretty good progress in the elections? Why are they steady? Why do they have momentum?
私は安倍晋三内閣総理大臣の政治信条、理念に必ずしも組みするものではありません。
I'm not necessarily in full support of the Prime Minister Abe's policies and philosophies.
しかし、ジャーナリストとして、40年やってきた中で、私は自分に課している一つの役割、私が果たしていかなければならない役割は、ファクトファインディングライターであり続けるということです。
But I still must stick to my own commitment, which is to be the fact-finding writer as a journalist running for 40 years now.
その意味で、安倍さんに対して 公平にそのファクトに基づいて話します。
So I must be fair, and I must talk about the facts when I speak of Prime Minister Abe.
残念ながらというか、安倍さんの人気が高いんです。
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say is, well, maybe I should say, unfortunately, Prime Minister Abe is popular.
選挙公示前から今日まで地方遊説を繰り返し行っています。もちろん重点選挙区、とりわけ接戦を演じている1人区の選挙区入りをしているわけですが、個々の選挙区をカバーするローカル新聞に直接正してもですね、オーディエンスが500人から1000人規模の場合にはですね、その7割方が安倍さんの演説に本当に真剣に耳を傾けている。演説が終わると大きな拍手が起こる。その中にはいわゆる自民党が密かに動員した、いわゆるサポーターがいるわけでもないにもかかわらずです。これがファクトです。
Okay, and so the fact that supports this popularity of Prime Minister Abe is that we all know that he has hit the streets to make his speeches around the country, mainly focusing on the single-seat districts, which is the key constituencies. And when you look at what's going on the streets in these districts, he, of course, has the local newspapers involved, and when the audience is a scale of about 500 to 1,000 people, then 70% of them will be on the streets with him, listening to his speech seriously and ending with a big round of applause. And it doesn't necessarily include some of the LDP supporters in the crowd.
ではなぜ人気があるのか、私にとっても皆さんにとっても不思議だと思います。
Okay, so now we're all wondering, why is Abe so popular?
一言で言うとですね、もちろん先の伊勢志摩サミット、それに続くオバマ大統領の広島訪問などといった外交的成果、それも具体的な成果を上げたことも大きいと思います。
One thing is he has some real accomplishments, the Ise-Shima summit and the President Obama's visit to Hiroshima.
それ以上に国民がかなり深い自覚を持って安倍評価をしているのは、安倍さんがこの3年半に余る、第二次内閣発足以降を見ていると、総理大臣としてネーションリーダーとして決めるときは決める人だ、このようなネーションリーダーはかつていなかったと、こういう印象を強く覚え、そしてそれが多くの有権者に刷り込まれているとしか考えられません。
Okay. And more than these diplomatic accomplishments, the reason why the nation, the citizens appreciate Abe with very strong intent is because of all the things that he has actually accomplished in the past 3.5 years, as a prime minister, as a national leader. Actually, he gets the job done. This is the kind of impression that the citizens, the voters have deeply in their mind.
したがって参院選挙では安倍さんが6月1日に約束した自民公明で改選議席の過半数を取ることを目標とするといった公約をはるかに上回る議席を自民公明で獲得し、参院選後の安倍一強体制はさらに盤石なものになると思います。
So that's why I forecast that as a result of the upper house election, we will see a very strong victory for the LDP-Kome coalition, as he has committed to in June 1st, actually achieving much more than the majority of the seats up for grabs this time. And so the sole leadership or the sole strength of the Abe administration will become even stronger.
まず参院選挙後に直後に行われる内閣改造および自民党役員人事、そしてその次に当初予定よりも秋の臨時国会をほぼ1ヶ月前倒しして8月下旬に召集し、2016年度の第2次補正予算として10兆円から12兆円規模の大型補正予算を組んで いわゆる総合景気対策を発表するということを通じて、この秋までに、現在1万3000円まで下がらなかったわけですが、現在の1万5000円の株価をまさに政権の命綱株価であると言われているこの今の政権ですから、これを1万8000円台後半まで戻して、対ドル為替レートについても105円から110円のゾーンになんとかなることを願いつつ、秋の政治の時期を迎える腹積もりです。
Okay. So right after the upper house election, what will happen is we'll have the cabinet reshuffle, and then the appointing of the party executives, and then the extraordinary session that was planned in August will be pulled forward a month to late August. And so there they will talk about the second supplementary budget of a scale of 10 to 12 trillion yen, so that they can mobilize their policies for the overall economy of Japan and take countermeasures. And through this, they would like to see the stock prices go up. It hasn't gone down to 13,000 yet, but it has gone down to 15,000. So we'll try to push that up to somewhere between 18,000 or close to 19,000, because you know that the stock price is the lifeline to the administration. And also in terms of currency against the dollar, try to bring that back to 105 to 110. Hopefully, and that is how they would probably welcome the season of autumn.
人事の争点は自民党の次期幹事長です。谷垣禎一現幹事長は、辞任するのはほぼ間違いなく、私の見立てではその後任には現在外務大臣の岸田文雄さんが就任するものと思われます。その人事は別として、この今申し上げた安倍一強体制の中で、安倍さんはこの秋以降何をしようとしているのかということを説明します。
Okay. And in terms of the party executive HR affairs, I'm pretty sure that the current chairperson, Mr. Tamigaki, will resign, and instead Mr. Kishida, the current foreign minister, will step up. I'd also like to talk about what Prime Minister Abe is probably intending to do after the autumn season.
セクレタリージェネラル。
Tamigakiさんですね。
幹事長ね。
So Mr. Tamigaki is the Secretary General. Excuse me.
まず秋はですね、7月に安倍さんはモンゴル・ウランバートで行われるASEM首脳会議、そして9月4日、5日にウラジオストクで行われる経済フォーラム、これの出席のためにロシアを訪問してプーチン大統領と会談し、さらに4、5、中国の広州に行って G20 首脳会議に出席し、さらに11月17から19日、ペルーのリマで行われる APEC 首脳会議に出席します。この3つの大きな首脳会議、国際会議の首脳会議において、今一つ、もう一度プーチンと会談する。つまり、この夏以降、安倍プーチンが2回会談を行う中で、12月中旬のウラジミール・プーチン大統領の日本訪問を確定し、その会談の中身をこれから準備します。その役割を担うのが、外務省の今度新しく政治担当外務審議官になった秋葉剛男です。
Okay. And so his plans after autumn will be, first of all, in July, visit the Mongol for the ASEM summit. And then September 4th to 5th, he will meet President Putin of Russia in an economic forum. That's the second event. And the third one is to go to China. So he will go to China and do the G20 summit. Then after that, he has November 17th to 19th, Lima in Peru for the APEC meetings. And so through these schedules, you can see that he will have an opportunity to meet President Putin twice in these summits, in the series of the summits and the international conferences. So during these meetings, he will try to fix the visit of President Putin in the middle of December, and also get prepared for the talks that he will be having with him. And also, I would assume that the new foreign minister will be Mr. Akiba.
竹脇番、急ぎますね、なぜかと言いますと、12月に、東京でか安倍さんの地元山口、どちらかで開かれるわけですが、この安倍・プーチン会談で、両国間の懸案の領土問題、条約締結問題、平和条約ですね、そして対ロシアに対する経済協力問題、この3つをパッケージにして、安倍さんの言葉を借りると、対ロシア新しいアプローチという形で、12月の中旬のその来日を機に、例えば2020年1月1日を期して、いいですか、はい、北方四島のうち2島を日本に先行返還すると同時に、日露平和条約を締結することで合意したということを発表できれば、安倍内閣支持率は 80% になります。
Okay. And then he's going to have the meeting in December in Tokyo or either Yamaguchi, and if he can put together a package with his talks with Russia, which includes 3 points: 1, the territorial issues; 2, the peace pact; and 3, the economic cooperation between Japan and Russia, if he can put that together as the new approach to Russia, so-called, and let's say he can also get the job done of having 2 of the 4 northern islands returned to Japan on the calendar of somewhere like 2020, January 1st, then that would be a huge accomplishment. On top of that, if he can get the peace pact concluded between Japan and Russia, then I would believe the support for the Abe administration will shoot up to something like 80%.
そう簡単ではないことは当然ですが、仮にそういう見通しが立てば、安倍さんは APEC 首脳会議から帰国する11月の下旬に衆議院を解散して、総選挙に打って出る、つまり年内総選挙を行って参議院選の勝利をバネにして、現在の衆議院の290議席を300を超える議席にする。そこから来年になって安倍さんの自民党総裁の任期が18年9月に切れますが、安倍さん、どうかもう1期3年続投してほしいという声を起こさせる、すなわち1989年の中曽根さんと同じケースです。なぜそのようなことを狙うか、先ほどリード先生の話にも出ましたが、今回の参院選では一切口に着工をして憲法改正を異臭化しない。しかし安倍晋三の政治家としての悲願は憲法改正です。仮にもう1期3年やれば2021年9月までです。それまでに安倍さんは憲法改正をしたいと同時に2020年の東京オリンピックを首相として迎えたい。仮に21年9月まで総裁を続投できれば、戦後最長不当距離を誇る佐藤栄作さんの7年8ヶ月を越すことになります。そのような野心をどこか頭の片隅に入れているのは間違いないと思います。
Okay. And so these are some of the schedules that we know exist, and the ambition is there. And having put these out, we all know that it's not easy to accomplish all of these. But as time passes, if these become more and more realistic, then he will be able to have a great success in the APEC meetings at the end of November, dissolve the lower house, go into general election by the end of this year. And this is how he would take the momentum after the victory in the upper house elections and make sure he has more than 300 seats in the lower house. Then what would happen is that people will be asking Prime Minister Abe, please continue for another 3 years next year. Then that would allow him to continue as long as Prime Minister Nakasone in 1989 Why? Well, Professor Reed talked about it a little bit, but that is because Abe has zipped his mouth for the most controversial issue of constitutional amendment. But we all know that it is in his head somewhere that he wants to accomplish the amendment. And so if he can continue another 3 years, that is until September of 2021, then he will have the time to accomplish the amendment. On top of that, he can welcome the Olympic Games in 2020 as the Prime Minister. And if he can continue until 2021 September, then that would be as long this time as Sato Eisaku, who has been incumbent for 7 years and 8 months, and he will be able to exceed that. It's probably his ambition, although he never talks about it.
Thank you very much for your good news for Mr. Abe. Now I would like to open the floor for questions and answers. Who would like to take the first question? Please proceed to the mic and let us know your name and to whom you would like to address your question. Yes? Just a minute. No journalist? Okay.
Siegfried Niedl, writing for the Austrian newspaper, Der Standard. Do you think, Mr. Toshikawa, do you think there will be a 2/3 majority now in the upper house election? And because I think this will be a precondition for changing the constitution.
ある意味では日本人はバランス感覚に優れていると思います。日本の心を大切にすると、および大阪維新の会を含めて、いわゆる改憲勢力といいますが、そこに自民党、公明党を足しても参議院では3分の2に届かないと私は思っています。
I think the answer is no. Japanese actually have a pretty good sense of balance. And I would forecast that even if we put the Osaka Ishin, the initiatives from Osaka, plus the Kokoro, and add that with LDP and Komeito, they will not reach 2/3.
All right. Yes, next question.
My name is Khalil. I'm ambassador of Bahrain. I'm very, very impressed by the two presentation and the interpretation. You talked about wisdom of Mr. Abe, and there's a lot of difference between the first and second term. From where this wisdom came? How did it develop? How it established? Thank you. Mr. Toshikawa.
私ですか。そういう難しい質問はやっぱりリーダー先生に。
That's a difficult one. Let's ask the professor.
The LDP has a remarkable learning curve when they lose. You've seen it over and over again. When they lose, they pay close attention. It focuses their minds. The other thing that Abe has accomplished is one of the reasons he's able to do this and produce the leadership that Toshikawa Sensei is talking about is that the party is unified behind him. The first time, and in fact up until Abe, the LDP has never been as unified behind a leader as it is today. So he can do stuff and not get stabbed in the back by his own party members. That's because the LDP, since 1955, up until 2009, had only been out of power for less than a year. Being in power was the norm, and it was the way they won. They didn't win on issues. They went on being the government in power. The last time I talked to him was a long time ago. It was after the 2009 election. I said that most Japanese think that currently the opposition is in power, No British guy would think, now the opposition is the government. No. That's still the opposition. They're just currently in power. It's a temporary thing. It wasn't temporary. It took 3 years and 3 months. But during that period, the LDP got their act together. And the first thing, how did the LDP lose in 2009? It was basically lack of unity. Over and over again, there was a lot of things, but lack of unity and inability to lead were the keys, right? You try to do something, you try to reform agriculture, and the agricultural people would come to you and say, sorry, you can't do that. You try to reform anything, and it would happen. Prime Minister Aso was by far the one where it stood out the most. He would announce some fairly strong initiative, and say, I can't do that by the next day. So did not produce an image of leadership. So when he got into power the second time, it was not only him but the party which had learned we can't continue to. Stab in the back is a little excessive, perhaps, but certainly, nobody did. Everybody. There's a lot of disagreement with Abe's policies inside the LDP. There's a lot of different disagreement with Abe's leadership. There's almost none of it hits the newspapers, and so and he can go and do stuff, and people will say, I don't think that people inside the LDP will say that's not necessarily a good idea, but they won't say it out loud and they won't vote against him. So he has the opportunity to be a leader, and he's taken very, very good advantage of it. He's done a lot of things that no prime minister before him could possibly do. I think the agreement with Korea over the comfort women issue is like totally unimaginable before this administration. The revision of forcing through TPP, amending the agricultural cooperatives could not have happened before. And part of it's him and part of it's the LDP that they learned. It's not actually wisdom in a sense that, he figured it's just a basic learning curve. If the LDP loses, they pay attention. I should also mention, I didn't say anything, I should have, that my position on these issues is very simple. My position on all issues about constitutional revision and peace and all that is very simple. The Japanese should decide.
学ぶっていう点で少し追加させてください。
Let me add a comment on the learning part.
自民党が学んだことはもちろん今リード先生がおっしゃったようにたくさんあるんですが、一番私は大切、我々が客観的に見る上で大切だと思うのはですね、一番学んだのは安倍晋三さんその人なんですね。すなわち2006年に第一内閣を立ち上げて、1年ちょっとで政権を放り出した後、彼は5年間どん底にいたわけですね。友達、サポーター、お金、支持母体、みんな亡くなったわけですよ。その5年間で彼が何をしたのかというと、一つはもちろん健康回復に努めた。二つ目は政治の世界と関係ないセクターとの人間関係を広げた。その次は多くの本を読んでるんですね。安倍晋三さんが読書家っていうのは皆さんのイメージと相当離れてると思いますけど、あの人は本当によく本を読んでいます。そしてもちろんアメリカ製の特に、テレビドラマ、FOX テレビやサンダーネットワークがあるいはイギリスの BBC が作るものもそうですけども、非常によく見てる。権力闘争が主にそのテーマのテレビドラマを見ていますが、本を実によく読んでます。で、そういう中で5年間を通じて彼が努力したことで学んで今生かされているのがスーパーリアリストになっている。ものすごい現実主義者です。2つ目はまたスーパープラグマティストです。実利主義者です。ですから冷理冷徹、平気でですね、人を切れる。自分を裏切った者は絶対許さない。ある種独裁者的な要因もその中には入っていますけれども、こうした凄みはですね、過去20年間の日本のネーションリーダーの中にはなかったものです。ちょっと長くなりますが、一つだけ付け加えると、 今、菅義偉官房長官がスーパーパワーを持っていると、雑誌や新聞は書きます。その菅義偉さんがですよ、首相官邸5階の一番奥にある総理大臣室、執務室に呼ばれたら、安倍さんは総理執務室の椅子に座って入れなさいと言ったら、入ってきて、総理から座れと言われない限り直立不動です。そこまで力関係ははっきりしてるんですよ。これが安倍一強リーダーシップの本質なんですね。つまり恐ろしく怖い人になっちゃってるんですよ。それは多くを学んだからです。
So about the learning part, let me talk about Prime Minister Abe. So the LDP learned a lot during its age of defeat, as Professor Reed mentioned. But I would like to mention some very objective facts that I think is very important about the learnings. The fact is, Mr. Abe himself personally learned tremendously. This is the point that I would like to elaborate on. So in the first Abe cabinet that was established in 2006, it only lasted for a bit over 12 months, and then he threw it out. After that, he had a tremendously depressing 5 years, lost everything: friends, supporters, money, the supporters' platform, the fundamentals. He had lost everything. So during the 5 years, what he did were three things. Number one, recover his health, first of all. Number two, build relationships with people who have no direct relationships with politics, other sectors outside of politics, and read books, number three. You might have a difficulty imagining him reading books, but he reads a tremendous amount of books. And he also watches a lot of TV dramas outside of Japan, Fox from America, the three major networks, even the British BBC. He watches very intently, mainly those dramas about the power battle and the dynamics there, of course. But my point is that he has learned fiercely, and he has transformed into this person who is a super realist, super pragmatic, and very level-headed. So if you would be a treater, or if you would try to go against him, he has no problem just cutting you out. In a sense, it can be called dictatorial, but that is how the strength of Abe has become. It's unrivaled now, and there has been no such leader in the past 2 decades. You all know Suga Yoshihide, the chief cabinet secretary. When he has to visit Prime Minister Abe, well, Abe calls him, he goes up to the 5th floor and goes to meet him. Abe says, "Come in." Then he would have to stand there in front of the chair without even a flinch until Prime Minister Abe says, "You may sit down." That's how strong he is right now. Actually, he's quite terrifying. And he has become such a strong man because of his learnings.
Yes, please.
Hi, thank you very much for your time. This is Hiroshi Hiyama from AFP's questions to Professor Reed. Just picking up on the points that Mr. Toshikawa made as well. It's multiple questions, if I may. You said that the peace card is an issue that we should watch during this time. Of course, Social Democrats or socialists have been active on this subject, but they have become very minuscule in their power. Why do you think? What makes you think that this time this sort of ideological issue or ideology issue is going to have possibly have a leg to stand on? So that's my first question. And following up to that, the nuclear issue, we thought that was going to be something, but it didn't result in a tangible electoral success. So I just wonder if you could just comment on those two. And also, if I may, Mr. Toshikawa said that Prime Minister Abe as a very popular leader. People listen to Mr. Abe's speech. Also, some analysts also seem to say that Mr. Abe is popular because of the lack of strong and viable alternative to Mr. Abe. Do you agree that Mr. Abe is a very popular leader? People like to listen to him, actively listen to him, or is it that he is benefiting from the lack of alternatives? also, my last point, I'm sorry. Japan's relations with Russia, Mr. Toshikawa raised the point that Mr. Abe is drawing closer to Putin. While at the same time, Mr. Abe has pushed the self-defense forces, the interoperability of the United States forces to become even more, to be improved. I wonder if you could comment on that to see if there's any, I don't know if there's a coherent diplomatic policy by having a both two-frontal, I guess, friendship approach with Russia and also with the United States. Thank you very much. Apologies for my long questions.
First on the peace issue, there's a whole series of things I could say about that. And I said, watch it. I didn't say it's going to make a difference, right? I said it may make a difference, and if it does, it will change the trajectory of the opposition parties. The reason the Social Democrats have done badly is their whole agenda is the most popular part of their agenda is simply the communist agenda and not working as well. The real question is, why do the socialists survive at all, the SDP survive at all? And the answer seems to be, in fact, they may not this time, right? They have a total of 5. They're trying to elect 2 this time, their current leader and their previous leader, and they have enough votes to elect 1. So in all likelihood, they'll only have 4, and they will be faced with really dire choices. How do they stay alive? It's not as well studied as I would hope, but a lot of things I hear and a lot of little research that I've done indicates that there are several pockets of socialist subculture. A socialist subculture that continues to be intransigent. It doesn't want to cooperate with either the communists or the Democrats. When the current leader suggested they might merge with the Democrats, the people that complained were those people. And subcultures like that can support a party well after it makes any sense at all. But the communists have just taken over that issue very, very completely. I mean, just listen to them on TV. They're saying pretty much the same thing, except the communists are convincing. And they also have votes that they can move. It's a very well-organized party. The socialists are not nearly as well-organized, and they're saying the same things. They've become irrelevant, at least on that issue. And in most places in the country, with very few exceptions. On the nuclear issue, that's a really amazing question. Can you imagine? I mean, in Fukushima, the nuclear industry, restarting nuclear power plants, did not become an issue. That's an amazing fact that I cannot explain with any confidence. But it's essentially the way the structure of the industry is built was designed to produce supporters, right? So if you look at, this has not been studied as well as it should be either, but there's a person in the United States that's doing a pretty good job, Kenji Kushida, and he's doing better than anybody else anyway that I'm aware of. And there's a nuclear village. I have the data to study that nuclear village, but I have not yet done it. But in the areas where the nuclear power plant is, everybody works for the nuclear power plant. and so you say, we close it down, right? And they say, no way, we're going to start it. We're the ones that suffered, but we want it restarted. The people who really dislike the nuclear power plants and are against it, I mean, there's obviously some even living in the same nuclear village, but are the people next door that don't get any money out of it and are still in danger. There's some court decisions that are being done, are underway right now that are essentially that kind of deal, right? We get nothing out of this, but we're in the evacuation area, and we think that you could not reopen. And there's still a lot of things in the air. They're not necessarily going to restart. A lot of governors have said, you guys are still trying to make money. You're not talking about the stuff that is important to us. We'll see how that all plays out. But it has not become a political issue, because in part there's several things. There's several people. There's quite a few people inside first of all, there's quite a few people inside the LDP that are against nuclear power. Kono Taro is the sort of one who appears in, every once in a while actually says something out loud. But there are quite a few more, but they don't talk because they have to stay behind their leader. There are quite a few people inside the Democrats who are in favor of nuclear power. Some of them in principle, some of them because they're representatives of the nuclear village, the labor unions, the Denryoku Souden, and the one of the candidates, Democratic candidates from Aichi, marched with an anti-nuclear demonstration and got bawled out by the people who are in that union. The leadership thing. Let's see. What was the question? Popularity. Popularity. Yeah. I think the leadership is important. That he is. But I go with spin doctoring over leadership. I think, for instance, one of the most. The next book will be on that's out in. It's sent to a press. We'll see what happens next. But is political corruption in Japan. And the standard way of dealing used to be that every time there was any kind of corruption scandal, the LDP lost significant amounts of votes. It was the only thing that they lost votes over, the only thing that the opposition could get around. And their way of dealing with scandals was like the worst possible way to deal with the media. It was the Nixon way. and people after Nixon figured out that that's not a good idea in America, right? They would deny everything and wait till the last minute and then have it all proved and then admit everything. That's very good strategy for dealing with the U.S. or the Japanese court system. It's very bad strategy for dealing with the press, right? And every time you say something, the next day it's wrong. You know, this is not the best way to produce trust. The first one, and copied by Masazoe, but the first one was Amadi. When Amadi had his problems, he got an outside group to come in and investigate people who belong to the legal profession and who couldn't cover anything up, because if they did, their whole reputation would be. I tend to use words that I really don't want cited in the newspapers, but "shot to hell" is the is the term that comes to mind. You know, they would lose their credibility. And if you look at the press, especially the Japanese press, criticized Amadi all along the line for not saying anything. But if you said something and it was wrong, you're going to get killed, right? And so that was the first time that a serious corruption problem happened, and the LDP cabinet support did not go down. As an American, I was sitting there looking at Amadi and saying he's doing the right thing, he's doing the right thing, he's doing the right thing. Turns out it was the right thing. That's what Masazoe tried too, and it worked. It worked for the LDP. It didn't really work for Masazoe very well, because he still refuses to believe he did anything wrong. And it may not actually work for Amadi all that well. We'll see. But certainly in terms of managing the media with respect to a scandal, they finally figured it out with Amadi, and they will continue to do it in the future.
Do you have any comments, Shikoso?
Yeah.
Okay. Joel?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joël Lejean from RTL France. Two questions. One is about Brexit. I mean, is there any impact that it could be expected in Japan? And turmoil, Mr. Abe, extraordinary popularity. I mean, is there something ahead that could be really bad? If you look at the yen for 1 year, I mean, it's always been very high and high and high, and it doesn't go down, down, down. So, I mean, this is a kind of problem. What do you think about it, both of you? And about Okinawa, I'd like to talk about this. There is a solid bastion, there's a solid strength against LDP, I suppose, and we see the people mobilizing a lot. What you said, it would be going to the opposition probably as a vote. Could you elaborate on that? But both of you, of course. Okay, thank you.
I forgot to answer about Russia. The answer is simple. I don't know. That's why I didn't answer. On the Brexit. Everybody has a position on how that works, but the data suggests that it doesn't actually have that much of an effect. The reason being simply that it cuts both ways. is when you have economic troubles, you definitely want a government that's experienced in handling economic issues. That's one argument. The other one is you blame whoever's in power. And both are true and they balance out. I don't think it'll have any effect.
英国の、EU 離脱問題の方はですね、安倍さんの実力のうちの一つは運と月っていうのがあると思うんですね。その運は先ほども話した5月27日のオバマスピーチ広島、あの日は前日の天気予報は広島地方は降水率 50% だったんですね。ところが当日は雲一つない、上天気だった。これは安倍さんの運月だと思いますね。でちょっとこの EU 離脱問題についてこれを月というと不謹慎な言い方になりますが、あえて使うとですね、当初考えられていた日本経済あるいは日本政治、具体的には安倍政権に対する与える影響はですね、相当深刻シビアなものになるというふうに多くの人が見ていたんですね。ところが実際には先ほども言ったように株価は1万3000円台まで下がらなかったし、そして円高も98円に瞬間風速で抜けましたけれども、結果として100円台をクリアしているのみならずですね、G7 サミットの議長総括会見で言った通りだったんじゃないのと。つまり、今世界が直面している経済危機はまさに深刻なものだと。だからありとあらゆる政策、財政、金融、構造改革すべてを総動員して立ち向かう、このリーダーシップを日本が取るんだというふうに安倍さんは主観的に言ったわけですね。でその役割をどうやらこれから日本は引き受けるということになる意味においてやっぱり月があったわけですね。ですから質問に対するお答えはですね、離脱ショックは必ずしも政権にとってはマイナスではないということ。で、実は2つ目の質問は後でお答えします。はい、
ありがとうございます。So on Brexit, I would like to answer first of all. Prime Minister Abe is blessed and he's lucky. That's a part of his power. Taking the example of the Obama visit to Hiroshima, it happened on May 27th, and the weather forecast said that there's a 50% chance of rain, but on the day there was clear blue sky. So he's lucky. And I shouldn't say he was lucky in the Brexit context. That's not an appropriate word, but still, when we talk about how good things turn out to be when it comes to Abe, is that before the Brexit referendum, people said that there will be a very dire impact, a severe impact on the Abe administration. But as I mentioned earlier, the stock price did not go down to 13,000. It stayed around 15,000. The yen, yes, it went down to 98 at one point, but it's on a stable level of 100 yen right now. And on top of that, people are thinking the things that Prime Minister Abe said at the closing speech in G7 summit was actually right, because there is a global economic crisis going on. It is serious, and Japan should take the role of doing whatever we can, a full mobilization of all policies, whatever it takes, to work on monetary policies, fiscal issues, and structural reform. And it's actually happening. Japan is actually taking on this important role. So the answer to your question is that the Brexit incident was not a negative incident to the Abe administration.
2番目のご質問の沖縄の問題、これが実は安倍政権にとって一番深刻な問題です。
And the Okinawans, the affairs which you brought up is the most serious problem for Abe administration.
1996年の当時の橋本龍太郎政権下において、当時のアメリカの駐日大使モンデルさんとの間で、普天間移設の基本的合意が行われて以降、今日に至るまで具体的な 問題の進展は全くありません。
First of all, under the Hashimoto Ryutaro administration in 1996, there was the agreement with the ambassador from the ambassador of the United States in Japan about the move to Futenma. There was an agreement, but nothing happened after that. There is no progress.
普天間飛行場の沖縄県名護市辺野古に対する移設問題ということは、もう早くに両国間では合意できていますが、依然として今なお何ら進捗状態を見ていません。
Although there was the agreement at a very early stage regarding the Henoko, the Nago city move, still nothing has happened. There has been no progress made at all.
首相官邸周辺および外務省などで今ささやかれている噂話を紹介します。
Let me share a rumor that is being talked about in the Prime Minister's office and foreign ministers.
ドナルド・トランプが11月8日の大統領本選で勝った場合、
So if Donald Trump wins in the main election in November,
来年の1月20日に大統領就任式が行われます。
the president will become incumbent from January 20th next year.
その翌日1月21日に中国が武装した漁民ないしは正規兵を尖閣諸島に上陸した場合に日本は具体的などういう対応ができるか、その時アメリカの沖縄に駐留している海兵隊をトランプ大統領は日本支援のために尖閣に派遣することはあるか、ないだろうと。じゃあ日本は海上自衛隊あるいは海上保安庁で中国の武装した漁民ないしは兵士を実力で排除できるか、できないだろうと。では尖閣はどうなるのか。その日から実効支配される。考えたくもないトランプ大統領だねというのが外務省や首相官邸で今言われていることです。
And so the rumor basically is, can it really be Trump? Is he really becoming the president? It can't be. We hope not. It's because of this chain of thoughts that I would like to introduce. So there's an inauguration of the U.S. president on January 20th, and then on the next day, the troops go onto the Senkaku island, and what is Japan going to do then? Are we going to ask the Marine Force down in Okinawa to come help and go to Senkaku Island? No. Is the Self-Defense Force going to use their force to try to exclude the Chinese off of the Senkaku Island? That's not going to happen either. Then what's going to happen to the island? It will be dominated by them. It will be occupied by them. Oh my gosh, this cannot happen. We hope it's not Donald Trump.
上の子に話を戻すとですね、今普天間にいる海兵隊の部隊は基本的にアメリカ側の戦略上のニーズからそう遠くない将来に確かにグアムあるいは一部にアメリカ本土、さらに一部はオーストラリアに移転させることは事実ですが、それまでには時間がかかる。その前になんとか辺野古の移設が可能にしてほしいと。それが日米の基本合意だろうというのが平たく言うとアメリカの共和党であれ民主党政権の対日本この沖縄問題に関する立ち位置です。
So let's go back to the topic of Henoko. So the Marine in Henoko, there's a needs on the part of U.S. that they will probably move some of their Marine base to Guam or U.S. mainland or Australia. That is a fact, but that will take time. So whether it be the Democrats or the Republicans from the United States, they would like to try to move to Henoko as soon as possible. Before this happens.
しかしながら現実を直視すると現在の沖縄の状況は政治的状況は何も尾長知事が反本土反安倍政権ということではなくて沖縄県民の総体の心思いが一致してしまっているんですね。辺野古移設それを認めることは強圧的に沖縄県民をこれまで、法制上もちろん担保はあるんですが、苦しめてきたことを結果として県民側が認めることになるという問題意識だけで 反対しているわけです。理屈をもう超えているわけですね。つまり感情の問題なんです。でこれを解きほぐすことは安倍政権であろうが何政権であろうがほぼ不可能です。しかしデッドラインは決まっているんですね。具体的なソリューションを安倍官邸は何も持っていません。
Okay. But when we look straight at the reality, we know that when it comes to the Okinawa situation, the political situation, it's not that Mr. Onaga is against the Abe administration. It's not about them. It's actually about the thoughts of the citizens of Okinawa and their strong feelings. It's actually very strongly united in this way. If they approve of this Henoko relocation, they would be approving all of the sufferings that they have been receiving from the government's decisions. Although, of course, they were legally secured, still there was a great force that was pressed upon them. And if they say yes to the Henoko move, that would mean that they would be sort of rejecting what they have been saying in the past. So this is very emotional, and it's beyond logic. And whether it be Abe or any leader or any force in the country, it would be very difficult to massage this very strong emotion. And so while they struggle to do anything, the clock keeps ticking and the deadline is coming ahead. But still the Abe administration has no specific solutions to this.
Thank you. Yes? Yes, please.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Satoshi Sugiyama from the Associated Press. I have two questions to Professor Reed, and we have one question to Mr. Toshikawa. Thank you. So first question, Professor Reed. So this is the upcoming upper house election. Is the first time that 18 and 19-year-old are allowed to vote. In your professional analysis, do you think the fact that 18 and 19-year-old are eligible to vote, does it have any impact on the Japanese politics? And second is, while the voting age is lowered, Japan is still look at discussing politics, political issues, such as schools or in families. They look at it as a taboo. So, in your opinion, has the government and has the government or even the society have done enough to promote this culture of discussing political issues with schools freely, and especially simply lowering the voting age? Is that gonna, do they have enough understanding? Do the new group of constituents have enough understanding of the actual issues being discussed? And another issues another question actually. I'd like to ask Mr. Toshikawa is the Nikkei a newspaper conducted a survey this weekend, and it was on Sunday's paper that 44% of new group of constituents, 18, 19-year-old, answered they would be voting for LDP. So the question is, yes, there is a movement put together by SEALs that is very anti-security legislation, but the fact that 44% of them voted that they're going to cast their votes, 18 and 19-year-old, that they're going to cast their ballots on LDP. Why does the party so popular among the youth? If you could answer these and provide analysis, that'd be appreciated. Thank you very much.
18 and 19. First of all, this is an area in which I have actual experience. I'm not an insider in politics, but I am an insider in teaching 18-year-olds. Why don't Japanese? First of all, let's start with why don't Japanese young people discuss politics? And I think the answer is really quite clear. It's the Juken Benkyo, it's the exam system. They don't read newspapers. They're not even told to read newspapers. They're sort of, avoid, and of course newspapers are going out of style, and they don't even look at the internet to look at anything like that. They study textbooks. So my freshmen come in very well educated, better educated on the basis, on the basics than people who enter Harvard. I've taught at Harvard for a couple of years. No, these guys are better. They know more. They're full of energy. But it's all textbook knowledge, and they don't actually ever have an opinion. It's very hard to get them, it's impossible to get them to state an opinion. One of my colleagues, one of her first friends in Japan, she met she met when he came up and asked her, I'm supposed to write a paper on my opinion. I don't have any. Can I borrow one? The only time my class, when I first come and teach, I was really pleased to find out that Japanese don't know a thing about Japanese politics. Japanese students don't, because that means I get to teach it. I was afraid my expertise would prove irrelevant because they would already know. No, they don't have a clue. They don't have any. They don't even know where the LDP is for the most part. I found that really pleasant for me. But I would go in and say, elections are interesting, and people their basic response was, boy, professors have strange interest. It was not, the only time when you got any interest out of the class was under the Koizumi administration, and that is not happening now. This is the first time when I teach my freshmen. One of the things that every professor suffers about is is this, information you're giving us really relevant to something in my life? And what you always tell them is, sooner or later, this will come in handy, right? And of course, they don't believe it, and they probably should not. Actually, a friend of mine before would guarantee his students that the information they learned in his class would never, under any circumstances, be of any use to them. And it proved a really good idea, because they would come back years later and say, you're wrong, and tell him it actually helped, and I thought about that for a while. But this is the first year I was able to introduce my class by saying, this class will be useful to you in July of this year. You should be paying some attention. It did not work. They are not attending class. They are not interested in studying. It's the same as back when things were really boring. I give them, in order to try to stimulate interest, the report required from freshmen is a report on your own electoral district, and I provide all the data they need. And so every once in a while it actually works, and people get interested, and they know who's running and stuff like that. But for the most part, they just blow it off and say something to get a grade and don't pay any attention. Is there more that anybody could do? And the answer is probably not. You could. The basic way to reform Japanese university education, actually Japanese high school education, is, if you believe in textbooks, right, is quite good. If you believe in being able to state an opinion and argue it, it's of course horrible. But the basic thing you have to do is get rid of the exam system, which is probably not wise. So I don't know what to do from there. The only sort of statistical evidence on what happens when you lower the voting age is that things become unpredictable. There is no way of predicting what people who have never voted before will vote for this time, right? It's just, you've got your poll, but that may or may not be accurate. Trying to educate them in high school is probably totally unwise. They can get the facts straight. They can get the textbook answers straight. And there's several moves in Japanese education at the lower levels before college. Actually, the best innovation, you asked a question I'm actually really interested in. The best innovations in Japanese education that I've seen since I've got here happen in kindergarten. It's going to take a while for it to work through the system. They're really using very, I don't know how many of them are, but there's several really good tests that people are using to tell whether a kid is smart or not. They says, how do your friends see you? Right? And you don't grade on whether it's a right answer or not. You grade on how much they understand about the question. This is really wise, and it will work. They're also beginning to introduce programming. This is really wise, and it will work. And 50 years from now, we will notice it.
今リード先生が、最近の若者は新聞読まないと言いますが、私は3人息子がいてで、長男がですね、今32歳で某テレビ局で報道をしています。その嫁さんは某大手新聞社で記者をしています。つまり、私の子供はですね、その嫁さんを含めて メディアの世界にいるわけですね。しかし私の記憶で、ある限りですね、彼が大学時代、同居していたわけですが、新聞を読んでるのは見たことありませんでした。私は自宅で仕事柄新聞5紙、事務所では赤旗から政教新聞まで11紙取ってます。それを毎日読んでます、東京にいる限りはですね。つまりそれは専門性の違いということはありますけど、若者が新聞を読まなくなった、雑誌を読まなくなった、小説本を含めて本を読まなくなったというのはもうだいぶ前からです。それに関わることですが、先ほどの質問の中に、日経の 40% の数値をご指摘されてましたけれども、要は一言で申し上げたいのはですね、シールズはもう本当微細な現象でしかないんですね、今の日本の若者の中では。で日本、私はベビーブームは団塊の世代ですから、特に全共闘運動を経験しています。ですから学歴に私は偏見を持っていませんが、学生が運動の先頭に立ってそこに普遍性を持つ、大きな広がりを持つ場合にはですね、残念ながら1960年、69年、72年とこれまであった3つの大きなストラグルの中でですね、東京大学、早稲田大学、これが運動の中核に出てこない限りですね、一つのムーブメントにはならないんです、残念ながら。シールズはですね、私も大学は上智ですから、キャソリックですね。シールズのリーダーはそもそも明治学院大学の奥田君がスタートさせたわけですが、今この運動を継承的に進めているのは、明学、青学、学習院は、キリスト教系とは必ずしも言いませんけれども、そうしたですね、クリスチャンの大学に在籍している男の子や女の子たちです。で、私の理解する限り、彼らの問題意識と運動の前面に立つことの継続性はほとんどないです。もちろん稀なケースはあります。やはり私は一過性なものだと思います。メディアはシールズを多く取り上げますけれども、私が言いたいのは普遍性がないということですね。加えてですね、18、19歳が投票権を得ました。ほとんど投票に行かないと思います。残念なことですが、それが日本の今の現実です。やはり7月10日夏休みが近くなる。雨でも降ればさらに投票率は18、19歳の人たちの著しい低い数字が後で出てくると思います。
Okay, so yes, let me also answer your question. Professor Reed talked about the fact that the youngsters don't read newspapers anymore, and it is true. I have 3 boys. The one that is 32 right now is the eldest. He's a TV reporter, and his wife is also a very active journalist in a newspaper. And although their professions are in these press industry, as long as I remember, when I used to live with him when he was a university student, he never read the newspaper. I've never seen him read a newspaper, although I read 5 newspapers when I'm at home and 11 when I'm at work, all the way from Akahata to Seikyo Shimbun, as long as I was in Tokyo. So, it is a fact that the youngsters unfortunately do not read newspapers, magazines, novels, and books anymore. So related to this situation, let me make a comment on that 44% stat that you gave us from Nikkei newspaper. So in one word, the students' movements that we've seen in the past, 1960, 1969, 1972, the major 3 struggles that, I've gone through, I've experienced because I'm a baby boomer, that kind of a strong movement cannot be seen right now, the Shields movement, unless in the past, unless there's Tokyo University or Waseda University involved in the core of the movements would not be sustainable. It would not have an impact impact. Currently, the situation is the Catholic or the Christian universities. I personally come from Jochi University as well, Catholic, so we would be a part of that. Also, Meiji Gakuin University, Mr. Okuda, I remember, has also been a part of this too. So it would be Meiji University, Meiji Gakuin University, Aoyama University. These Christian universities, the boys and girls there would be a center of a movement, if any, because they do have a very strong sense of issues to these matters. But would they be strong enough to create a movement that is sustainable? Would they be in the front line so much that there will be an impact? Most of them probably will not be. I wouldn't say all. If any, it would be transient. So that is the situation, and unfortunately, I don't think the 18-year-olds and the 19-year-olds will go to the ballot box, actually. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality of Japan today. You know, and on top of that, if it rains on July 10th, and they're at the end of their semester, we'll ultimately see a very low voting rate from these two ages, 18, 19.
Thank you very much. We have to wrap up our event today. I would like to present 1-year honorary membership, Professor Reed. Thank you for your insights. And Mr. Ishikawa is already a member, so I provide gifts from the club, wine. Thank you very much for coming today. Have a nice evening.